Are you ready for the weekend? I am. It can't get here fast enough. Let's finish up today and then we'll take a break. How does that sound? In fact, if you're going in the usual order after English, today you're done with me for 3 days. And isn't that a blissful thing? We're going to go through troublesome words today. We did troublesome verbs yesterday, and we'll have some more verbs mingled in. But most of what we'll discuss will be a contrast between verbs and nouns. Okay, verbs and nouns that are very similar, but as you well know, verbs and nouns are very different parts of speech. And just as a reminder, we are only one more class period away from not learning any new English grammar for the rest of the school year. Just one more class period, Monday, and then we're donezo with it. So let's see what we can do here for this Thursday. And just to remember, if you don't like it or if you think it's dumb, there's only one more day of it that is left. Okay, some troublesome words. And you'll notice, like I did yesterday, I'll have 1 and 1, 2 and 2, and in this case 3 2s. I'm aware of that. But we're discussing all of these as a group together, and this is the best way I know to set them apart with limited space. So that's the reason I've done it the way I have. Okay, so number 1, accept and accept. All right, accept and accept. What's the difference between the two? Accept with an AC at the beginning is a verb that means to receive. Okay, as in football, won the coin toss and we accept to receive the ball first. It means to receive. Whereas accept is a preposition and it means not including. Okay, it's a preposition, except with an EX, that means not including. Okay, so let's use each one in a sentence. For accept, AC, I accept late homework. Should I or shouldn't I? That's a good question. Nevertheless, I do. I accept late homework, and I have some late homework that still needs to be turned in, and for right now, I'll still accept it through the end of the week, which is waning, isn't it? But I accept late homework. That is, I receive, or for right now, I'm okay with getting late homework. However, here's a sentence using accept, EX, that's a preposition. My students' homework, and please forgive my abbreviations for my lack of space, but my students' homework H, right? H then W, that's where I was ahead of myself. My students' homework HW period is good, except Nikolai's. That Nikolai, sometimes he takes shortcuts. Now, he's a great student. He knows that. You guys do too. My students' homework is good, except Nikolai's. Except being a preposition, Nikolai's serving as the object of that preposition. However, it's interesting that it is a possessive and it implies homework. But see how that's used as a prepositional phrase, and Nikolai's there is used as a possessive independent. You might remember learning about those. Okay, but you see the difference. It's not a verb as it is with accept, AC. These two are very similar. Affect and effect. Number 2, affect and effect. And we're just going to talk about these two right now, and then we'll get down to this here in just a little bit, the third one. Affect with an A is always a verb, and that means to influence something. Now, we were all there that day when Micaiah made an awfully funny noise in the room. And we even had some English narrative about it. And I hate to bring up something that's so old, but it made such an impression on our minds, I'll probably never forget about it. And Micaiah, I'll probably never stop talking about it when I'm around you anyway, for the rest of my life. So, for affect, verb, to influence, Micaiah, with an A, affected our room scent, at least hypothetically. You know, what did you, I mean, you were all there, you heard it, okay, you saw things with your own eyes, you can let me know what you smelled later. But Micaiah affected That's a verb. Our room scent. Affected what? The scent of the room. That's a direct object. Number 2, effect with an E is a noun, and that is a result. And so Micaiah's deed had a smelly effect. Notice how that is used as a noun, okay, at the end of the sentence. A result. Micaiah's deed had a smelly result, is what we're saying. I hope this isn't embarrassing Micaiah, and I certainly hope that her mom isn't watching this. Her brother, he already knows what happened. Well, and you know what he is. He's a machine, so this is common with him. I hope your dad doesn't hear about this, Micaiah. He'll really be disappointed, really be embarrassed in you, about you. Okay, so Micaiah's deed had a smelly effect. That is a result. Now, here is one thing that I do want to toss out, though. Effect, with an E, it can be used as a verb also, and that makes it really confusing. All right, but it's more than just to influence something. That's always a, pronounced but always a effect, to influence, but to actually cause it, okay, to be the root source of it, that is effect that can be used as a verb. Such as, Micaiah effected a scent cloud. Ooh, disgusting, isn't it? So it's not just that she influenced, it's that she created. Okay? I guess there's a sense in which you can say that God effected the world. Meaning he caused it to be. I know that sounds funny, but it would be grammatically correct to do that. You could also say God has had a profound effect, a profound effect on the world, or a great result. God has tremendously affected our world. Okay, meaning he's influenced. So actually you could use all three of these. God effected the world and then he caused it to be. God has affected or greatly influenced the world. Or God has had a terrific effect on the world, or a result, a noun itself. And I know those three, those can be really confusing, and especially probably these two. This one's a little easier because it's used as a noun, whereas these two are close in meaning, and they're also the same part of speech. So keep an eye out for those. Numbers 3. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? But when you have 3 number 3s, I think that's correct to say it as such. 3, borrow, lend, and loan. Borrow, lend, and loan. Those are similar concepts, but they have slightly different meanings. And 2 of them are different parts of speech. To borrow is a verb, and that means to receive something on loan. Okay? So my sentence is this. Gage needs to borrow a pencil. Alright? And really there, technically, to borrow, that's being used as a verbal, and as an infinitive, if I can spit it out. But it's still a verb form of the verb, right? Gage needs to borrow a pencil, and that is commonly the case. He'll ask to borrow a pencil. Mr. Derek, I need a pencil. I'll say, Gage, I don't have any more pencils. And Gage will say, what am I supposed to do? And I say, cut your finger and write in blood, because that's all I have left. It doesn't change the fact that Gage needs to borrow a pencil quite often. Okay, lend is also a verb, and that means to provide temporarily. It bugs me. Look at that. I did that with 2. This one I closed a parentheses, what should be quotation marks, and that one I just left off everything. So lend is a verb that means to provide temporarily. Okay, Carter, this is the past tense. I know this sounds funny too. This is the past tense of lend. Carter lent him. It's not lended him, but Carter lent is the past tense of the present tense, lend. Carter lent him a highlighter. Well, that sounds about right, doesn't it? Or maybe you would do a marker. You guys have the weirdest writing utensils, but it is what it is. So Carter lent him a highlighter. And I did have to look that up. I thought, that's got to be the way you spell it, and it is. You might be familiar as well with the brand Hi, H-I- I believe it's L-I-T-E-R. Both parts of which are different. Well, this is a general spelling and highlighter, and then that kind of highlighter that I just spelled to you, that's the actual specific brand is a proper noun. So Carter lent him a highlighter. Okay, loan is a noun, and it means something that is temporarily lent. Okay, and it may be that Carter would say after that, consider it a loan. Notice how loan here is used as a noun. I don't loan you something. We say it a lot that way, don't we? I loaned you a pencil. No, I lent you a pencil. Will you loan me a pencil? No, but I will lend you one. Okay, you see how that's the difference between the two. Lend is a verb, loan is a noun. And to lend is to provide something temporarily, whereas loan is the something itself that is temporarily lent. So that's the difference between the three of those. Number 4 is a standalone. That's why there are no duplicates of number 4. Etc. I want to be very clear about this one. We almost always, I said it probably for 20 years, I would say, in my life. I said etc. That's incorrect. ETC. And because the T comes before the C, that's meaningful in pronunciation. Alright? It's not etc. It's et. Actually, space, etc. Now that's okay to abbreviate the word like that, ETC, that's common. However, the word is actually et space cetera. And if that sounds extra worldly in terms of English to you, that's for good reason. That's not an English word. That's actually I guess you'd probably call it a transliteration, but it's actually a Latin term. Okay, 2 Latin words. And what it means is and others, or there are more that could proceed after that. It's an adverb as a part of speech. And by the way, whenever you're doing formal writing, like we are for your papers, we're going to have a couple of writing assignments to conclude the year after we're done with this unit. Don't use etc. Instead use and others. Okay? Or you could do it this way. Anna, this is of course an example sentence, Anna has many colors of pens such as, okay? And I would probably put a comma there myself. But Anna has many colors of pens instead of Anna has colors of pens like red, blue, black, etc. Don't do that, okay? Anna has many colors of pens such as, you might say black, blue, and red. But that kind of lets you know that's not an exhaustive list, but those are just some examples of the ones that she has. But again, in formal writing, just avoid this altogether because it is considered informal in its usage. Put something like and others or such as. All right, the 2 number 5s. What's the difference between fewer and less? I think we had this some. There are certain grammatical things that have some overlap to them, and I think this is one of them that we already discussed to some degree earlier. But fewer is used with plural count nouns. Okay? Let me give you an example. We have fewer students than, and I have dot, dot, dot in several of these sentences just because I don't really have room to finish them. But we have fewer students than. Why would I say fewer? Because students is a plural count noun. In other words, I can easily say there's 1 student, there are 2 students, there are 3 students, there are 4 students. Right? I can go through and I can count every student one by one. Less is used with non-count nouns, and I don't have this on here, I hope it's understood, but these are both adjectives as they're used here. fewer describing students in this sentence, less describing English homework. Less is used with non-count nouns. For instance, we have less English homework than what we had earlier in the year. And I know you know that, and I know that you're happy about that. And so am I in grading, I assure you. But let me give you another example. I might say, and this is just off the cuff, but I might say, would it be I have fewer or I have less markers than what I had earlier in the year? Fewer or less markers? Well, according to my rule, I would use fewer because markers are easily countable. 1 marker, 2 marker, 3 markers. Now, if I were to say, would it be I have fewer water or I have less water after I took a drink? I have fewer water or I have less water? I would say I have less water because while it's true that water is measurable in terms of fluid ounces, at the same time you can't really say in here, I have 1 water, I have 2 water. I mean, you don't really do that, right? And so that would be considered a non-count noun, even technically, although you could use some sort of measurement to get an idea of how much water it is. Okay, fewer has more to do with number, and less is more about amount. Fewer is about exact number, less is about amount. So that's a good way to differentiate between the two. 6 is a standalone. Words like pronouns, his self, their self, themselves. Stop it. Don't do it. Now, you guys don't do that, and I'm glad you don't, because it would drive me crazy if you did. His self, their self, and themselves ain't words. Just like ain't. You wouldn't say, Caden his self aced his math test. That's wrong. You would say, Caden himself aced his math test. True story, BTW. Very good, Caden. His self isn't a word, it's himself. Their self, oh, here, I made a mistake on this one. I had so much writing on here. At least that's what I'm blaming on, not my dumbness. I meant to put their selves like their self. But his self, no, it's not a word, it's himself. Their self, or their selves, those aren't words, it's themselves. And so avoid using his self, their selves. Incorrect. And our last one, number 7, prophecy and prophesy. You can notice there's just a little difference in pronunciation, not much. Prophecy with a C is a noun, and that means a prediction. And prophesy, a verb, means to predict. Okay? So if you're prophesying, you're predicting. But if you give a prophecy, you have made a prediction. One's a verb and one's a noun. And a couple of examples of that. Malachi. You guys are learning about the minor prophets in Miss Nicole's quarterly Bible class. Malachi, as it's arranged, and it appears as well probably in chronology, the last book of the Old Testament written, very close anyway. Malachi's prophecy, meaning his prediction, describes Jesus. But you could also use prophesy, the verb, meaning to predict, about the same man in the same account. You can say Malachi prophesied about Jesus. So you see, Malachi's is an adjective describing prophecy, whereas in the second sentence, Malachi is the subject. It's a noun that acts as the subject, and prophesied is the verb itself. Described is the verb in the former. So the prediction is the prophecy, and Malachi's prophesying, is doing that, is predicting about Jesus, is a prophecy. And so the C is the noun, the S is the verb. So I hope those are helpful. Those are quite a bit more challenging than the ones that we've really discussed up to this point. Okay, I'm going to have to pause and put, sorry I didn't quite have enough room. I know that's frustrating, especially for me. But I'm going to pause and I'm going to put just the last 2 or 3 up here, and we'll go through those, and that'll be all. We only have 2 more. It won't take us very long. Real is an adjective, number 8, and really is an adverb. And basically you're saying the same thing with these 2 words. It's just that the base term itself is just being used as a different part of speech. And let's get real here, fittingly. Parker can be a real pain in the rear. Well, that's not very nice, is it? But let's face it, sometimes the truth hurts. Real is describing the noun pain. And so Parker can be a real as an adjective, noun, pain, in the rear. But real as an adjective describes pain. I do want to be fair though. You know me, I try to be impartial. And let's use really, the adverb, also to describe Parker. On the other hand, Parker can also be really sweet. Oh, sweet little Parky. So sweet here is an adjective. It's a predicate adjective, but there's a word before sweet that describes this adjective. And what is the only kind of word that can describe an adjective? That is an adverb. And so you wouldn't say Parker can also be real sweet. Now you might hear it that way, but that's grammatically incorrect, because that word is describing an adjective, and real, an adjective, cannot describe an adjective. All right, that's the role of an adverb. And to conjugate it or turn it into an adverb, you would add an ly, as adverbs commonly have at the end of them. So Parker can also be really sweet. ... Not. Okay, number 9. Than and then. What's the difference between than and then? Than is a conjunction that means in comparison with, whereas then is an adverb that could mean one of 2 things. Either it means at that time or next in the process of things. For instance, Joey has killed more deer than I. By the way, normally we would say that Joey has killed more deer than me. That's incorrect. And you know why? You can put a verb right after that, like have, that would be insinuated, and which sounds proper then. We normally say, Joey's killed more deer than me. But think about this. Joey has killed more deer than me have. Or I guess it would be, me has? No, neither one makes any sense. It makes you sound like a preschooler, doesn't it? So toss that verb in at the end, and that'll help you to determine whether it's I or me. Now listen to this. Joey has killed more deer than I have. Ah, you see why it's I, a nominative case, and not an objective case. That's a side note though. So Joey has killed more deer, not than I, but than with an A, I. Because I'm comparing the number of deer Joey has killed to how many I myself have taken. And just for the record, Joey probably kills more deer in a year than I've killed in my lifetime, okay? But I do enjoy doing it too, Joe. On number 9, the second part of it, then with an E, that is an adverb which means at that time or next. I wouldn't say than, T-H-A-N, Joey drove out into the woods. I'm not comparing Joey to anything, okay? I'm not comparing Joey's driving to anything. There's no comparison here at all. It's an adverb that's describing at that time, or I might mean by that, if I'm using a narrative, it might mean that next in sequence. Joey, from where he was, he went out into the woods. There is no comparison that's here, though. And so it's at that time is the meaning. Joey drove out into the woods. Therefore, I use then and not than. And as far as adverb, what does an adverb describe? Typically, as we discussed over here, an adverb can describe an adjective, okay, or another adverb. It's possible. But what it's describing is the verb, which is common with an adverb, drove. Joey drove out into the woods. And it answers the question as an adverb, when did Joey drive out into the woods? So that's the difference between than, a conjunction, and then an adverb. We are done. At least you're done with me for the week. Go enjoy your 3-day weekend, guys. Have some fun.